You could do it, and even if you can't, we won't think any less of you, man.
Some nice friends you got there, Davis.
Why are you running?
Rewatching Season 2 of the original Digimon anime, which is considered by many to be one of the best, I honestly found myself loving it all over again. Taking place 3 years after Adventure, 02 gives us a new generation of Digidestined who can freely warp between their adventures and their normal everyday home lives. But in the face of a new, decidedly more human threat, they have to utilise the newly created Armour and DNA Digivolutions, both of which are really cool and often leave you guessing what strange new combos they're going to turn to.
Fusion is just a cheap tactic to make weak gens.
But the aspect of Season 2 that's kind of mid is its main characters. The only returning Digidestined from the first series are TK and Kari, who, due to their having grown up a bit, are both a little more bland now. Our new main hero, Davis, is a massive douche, but he often crosses the line from being funny and endearing for it, and sometimes is just a massive douche. Also, Yoli and Cody are both here, and they're both okay. They are passable party members. But there is one exception to this, a human character that really stands out. The aforementioned human threats.
Run for your lives! It's the evil Digimon Emperor!
This is Ken Ichijuji, the Digimon Emperor. And instead of my typical episode breakdowns, I want to focus on this maniacal little shit, because he's typically all I really think about whenever this season of Digimon is brought up. I really like what they do with him as a character, save for one little detail which I will get into later.
Well, this is just a game to me. And I'm afraid that if you can't play by my rules, I'm just going to have to disqualify you.
Up to this point, every major villain had been a relatively powerful Digimon, pulling strings, hounding the heroes, and eventually getting completely obliterated in a climactic final battle. But 02 mixed things up a bit by giving us a human antagonist. And even when I first watched this as a kid, I was already confident that they weren't going to have our heroes kill another kid, even in self-defense. Modern Digimon absolutely would do that, but this was still early on. The Digimon Emperor spends most of his screen time constructing dark towers in order to enslave Digimon, all while musing about how superior he is and abusing his snivelling Wormmon. But, much like the heroes, he also has a personal life which he keeps fully separate from his digital conquest. We get a glimpse of insight into said life in episode 3, where the gang watch a news report about him without yet figuring out who he is.
Ken's talents include being able to play one game of chess while everyone watches. Just last week, he actually balanced the world's biggest checkbook. And that's not all. He's a champion in judo and a star on the all-state soccer team.
Ken is a child prodigy, a gifted kid, which is already a big red flag in the world of anime, something like Yagami. And moments after we see this side of Ken, we then see him encounter a cute little doggy IRL.
Beat it, you mangy little mutt, or I'll call the pound.
Oh, okay, never mind. I guess I'm the disturbed child here. I could have sworn he kicked that dog. I guess, in my mind, I figured that scene would have hit harder if he abused animals. And I've managed to Mandela effect myself. I wonder if the Japanese version has him kick the... Oh, there we go. It's not just me being bloodthirsty for puppy kicking. That scene was literally missing the payoff. Whew, glad I'm off the hook now. So, anyway, Ken is sadistic, egotistical, sociopathic, and a boy genius, all with a god complex, and he considers the digital world to be his own personal playground. On top of that, every violent encounter he has with the Digidestined, be they from a safe distance or face to face, is to him just another hurdle to overcome.
Why must everyone question my authority? Does it always have to turn into a great big production?
After a few more clashes, episode 8 gives us a very interesting twist, as well as a certain football match that may or may not have been memed to hell and back. However, that match is actually a really important turning point. Not only is it the first time that Ken identifies his enemies IRL, but near the end of the match, he takes a bad tackle from Davis, leaving him with a noticeable cut on his leg.
Hey, how'd you get that cut on your leg?
Bike messenger. Knocked me down.
This was massive. Ken's anonymity was his biggest advantage over the heroes, but his refusal to hide his injury or concede to Davis in any way motivates him to equalize the playing field. Honestly, after this, I'd start sleeping with one eye open in fear that they'd find me in a phone book, break into my house, and smother me with a pillow. But that's why I'm not a digital tyrant. As far as you know. Anyways, more clashes take place over the next 10 episodes, with Ken first gaining the ability to control ultimate level Digimon, and then resorting to Frankensteining Digimon together in order to create Chimeramon. Eventually, this shit does have to stop, and creating an abomination that even he can't fully control makes for a good final gambit from the Emperor. And as a nice parallel to Season 1, where the first major antagonist meets his match against TK's Patamon, this season has its first major antagonist meet his match against Patamon's TK.
When you can't think of anything to say, do you always resort to fighting?
I guess.
This is more cathartic than words can describe, because A, the dub somehow let this through uncensored, B, Ken absolutely had this coming, and C, nothing is better than having a human character just beat the shit out of someone, despite having a transforming monster friend right next to them.
Hey, Ken, remind me where we left off the next time I'm pummeling you into oblivion.
With his power and influence undone, the real kicker for Ken, the moment where he realizes that this has all been entirely real and that he's a fucking monster of a human being, is when his sniveling henchman, Wormmon, sacrifices himself in order to stop Chimeramon, effectively saving everybody.
What have I done?
This emotional breakdown hits plenty hard enough as it is, but then we get the two-hit combo of Ken somehow earning the crest of kindness, and then casually dropping this bombshell.
Not again. Wormmon's gone, just like my brother. I was helpless to save him, and now I can't save Wormmon either.
Well, I'm sure we'll get around to that. Now, due to this deviation from my usual format, I've kind of glazed over the third OVA, Hurricane Landing Transcendent Evolution, but personally, I find it to be a tonally dissonant, plodding, and weirdly depressing mess of an OVA, so I don't think I'm gonna lose any sleep over this. The only things I really liked about it were its art style, the abundance of Best Boy Terriermon, and this bizarre exchange from the dub version.
That's the saddest story I ever heard.
I'm the one with the problem, not you. Get over it.
Okay.
Some would describe the Digimon movie as being a bit of a butcher job, slicing up different OVAs and slapping them together. But in this case, the meat was already rotten before the cleaver even hit it. Not even ending with Smash Mouth was enough to salvage this one.
Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on.
Moving back to Ken, episode 23 has him recollecting his tragic backstory, and oh my sweet god, is it a heavy episode. As soon as the opening sequence ends, we see Ken's parents, who are fraught with worry over what seems like a severe depressive episode on his part.
Don't worry, he's strong, just like his mother.
The recollection begins, and in record time, I can already see this episode rooting up a boatload of trauma for a good chunk of people out there.
All the neighbors came up to me again and said what a wonderful boy you are. One of them even asked me for an autograph. Can you believe it? Oh, Ken, I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Never mind, Mama. It's not important.
Oh no.
That's it. If only Sam weren't here, then I'd be the one they loved. I wish Sam would just disappear.
Oh no!
Ken!
Uh-oh.
Just what do you think you're doing?
I didn't break it.
I said don't touch it.
Huh. Ken really did style his Emperor persona after his older brother, didn't it? Oh no!
I was just mad when I said I wanted you to disappear. Look how sad I made my parents. They loved Sam more than anything in the whole world.
Oh cool, he blames himself! I don't have an oh no big enough for that. That's just painfully upsetting. That's way too fucking real. You don't have to go for the throat, Digimon. Even worse, Ken then gets an email from a mysterious benefactor, who really lays it on thick for him.
Now that your parents have lost their hopes for their perfect child, you will be expected to carry out the dreams that Sam can no longer fulfill. This world will become unbearable for you. Pressure to succeed will be too great.
Naturally, this all leads to Ken, who very well could have been one of the original Digidestined, allowing his Digivice to be corrupted by darkness, and inheriting the power to become the Digimon Emperor. So, with all that depressing history laid bare, this episode then gets even more emotional.
We're very sorry. We should have seen the sun we had, instead of spending our time constantly looking for the sun that we lost.
Forgive us. All we're asking for is a second chance.
I don't know what it is they want from me.
Despite the fact that Ken is actually dissociating because he's so ridden with guilt that his brain can't process it, his parents are still able to reach out to him. But it's not his parents that he needs to make amends to, it's his victims. They aren't quite as understanding.
I recognize you even without your fancy clothes.
What do you think's going to happen? Wormmon's just going to hatch so he can be treated badly by you all over again?
So this sets up the whole second half of the show, where Ken is forced to recognize what he's done, acknowledge the hurt that he's caused, and slowly redeem himself.
These hands have caused so much pain. Sure, put a textbook in them and I'm a genius, but put a whip in them and I'm the evil Digimon Emperor. How could I have allowed this to go so far?
And it's not taken lightly either. It does take a while for the heroes to trust him, let alone warm up to him. But by taking that first step and vowing to be better, Ken is given his second chance in the form of a reborn Wormmon.
Thank you for giving me a second chance. Mama, I'll give you that second chance if I can have one.
So we then enter a period of uncertainty where nobody quite knows where they stand with each other.
Impossible. When he was the Digimon Emperor, he was ruthless. He might be pulling another trick on us.
Ken is able to digivolve Wormmon now, but their approach to problem solving is still heavy-handed enough to raise eyebrows. This leaves the party with wildly different levels of trust that Ken is capable of personal growth.
I'm sorry, Davis, but I don't think I can trust him, not after what he did.
However, these doubts are completely put to rest when Ken is called in to help deal with a new enemy, and seems worryingly eager to martyr himself doing so.
This is my responsibility. I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of me.
Thankfully, Davis is there to slap that shit out of him, while Stigmon gets away with a stern talking to. I'm particularly glad about the latter. Dude's been through enough.
He still has nightmares, horrible ones, but then mine are worse.
Okay, so you messed up a few times. You think I haven't? I do it all the time. Don't give up. Fix it.
I don't know how.
By opening himself up to the idea of having a real friend outside of Stigmon, Ken and Davis are able to DNA digivolve their partners, and the resulting Digimon is so overpowered that any one-on-one fight is basically a steamroll if both Ken and Davis are present. Or at least he will be when he unprecedentedly digivolves into...
So guys, be honest, how do we look?
But, you know, if a big fuck-off dragon isn't enough, you could make him 3 times stronger and also give him a gun. Yeah, this season goes heavy on the power creep. In fact, I don't even think I can call this power creep. It's more of a power pole vault over Mount Everest. But that's not what I'm really focused on right now. I'm more interested in watching Ken grow more comfortable around his new friend group, which is really nice to see unfold.
We won't let anything happen to you! Concentrate! Come on, Ken, we know you can do it!
Stay strong, Ken! You can't keep beating yourself up for all the things you did in the past, Ken!
However, it's around this point in the series that we're introduced to a plot device that I'm really not fond of. Yes, it ties into the overall story and even links back to Adventure if you follow Adventure's extended universe and play all of these surrounding games, but I also feel like it ruins an aspect of Ken's character. I'm being way too vague. I'm talking about the Dark Spores. The final boss of this series is revealed to be Myotismon, who survived his defeat in the original series and then began a lengthy campaign of possession and manipulation. All of this in order to make his return and finally digivolve. And to help him pull this off, he would implant dark spores into people, which would slowly corrupt them, imbuing them with dark power and knowledge, which he himself could then harvest later. So, while this is great for establishing Malomyotismon as a real threat, it also cheapens Ken in my eyes, because even if his resentment and guilt made him more susceptible to this corruption, I still feel like it takes away from some of his personal agency in having become the Emperor. Ken is both a great villain and a great hero because his redemption seems so very impossible at first. He's a complete and utter bastard, and I prefer the idea that this wasn't because of an evil vampire monster putting a spore in his neck. I like the idea that his sadism, his superiority complex, and all of that pent-up anger he was feeling really was his. He is capable of embodying these awful, awful traits, as all people are. And the fact that he's a messed up kid serves as solid reasoning for why he turned out the way he did. Not justification for it, heavens no. Slavery is bad, but definitely reasoning.
Look at all of those fools out there, dreaming away their meaningless lives, running around like rats in a maze. Not one of them is worth half of what I'm worth.
For as much as this show really wants to hammer home that Ken didn't know Digimon were real, and that he wouldn't have gone to the extremes he went to if he did know that, I don't think I fully buy it. Not only because of that violent manifesto that he just dished out, but, well, he definitely knew that stray dog wasn't digital. And to really hammer home why the spores feel so cheap, we have to look at the moment where Ken finally comes to his senses, the moment he gets his partner back. It's not during the long period where he's dissociating or wallowing in guilt, or even when he tries to half-heartedly apologize.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment.
It's when he reaches down and promises to do better, and he actually means it. Because kindness is not something that's innate to us as people. Kindness is a choice. It takes dedication and effort to be your best self and to put other people first. And as Wormmon himself says earlier in this very season, it can leave you open to being taken advantage of, so you need to back it up with strength and self-assuredness. These lessons all resonate with me and hit much harder than don't let Dracula plant a tree inside of you. Not that that isn't a good lesson in itself, you shouldn't do that, vampires are dangerous, so are evil trees, but you get where I'm coming from here. So that's my breakdown of Ken, my favourite human character in all of Digimon. He later becomes a cop. You can't win them all, I guess. Anyway, before I leave you, I think it's worth us taking a very quick peek at 02's second OVA, Diaboromon Strikes Back. Or as I like to call it, God damn it, why didn't we wait for this OVA to come out and use this as the final act of the Digimon movie instead? This would have actually fit. Strikes Back. The heroes from both Adventure and Zero Two, or at least those who are available at the time, all gather round to discuss the return of Diaboromon, who managed to reproduce even after being DDoS attacked and stabbed by Omnimon. And this time, he's even able to spawn Kuromon into the real world by means of email attachments.
Let's find it and destroy it! I'm going to! Thanks, Davis. But you guys need to stay here and gather up all those loose Kuromon.
The Kuromon all seem to be docile, if not annoyingly ever-present. But meanwhile, in cyberspace, TK, Kari and the Angel swoop in to pin Diaboromon down, allowing Ty, Matt and Omnimon to moiderize him all over again. Unfortunately, this is exactly what Diaboromon wanted to happen, as by being destroyed he was able to revert to his base form, and then escape out into the real world himself, alongside his tens of thousands of copies.
Can I offer you a nice egg in this trying time? Yeah, he's got an egg, you
Once this egg hatches into Armageddon and Omnimon returns from the internet, a final battle in the real world can take place. So even Omnimon can't take this fool, eventually burning himself out. But after psyching one another up and running over, Ken and Davis arrive to use their own overpowered fusion. Also not a great result. However, by lending their power to Imperial Dramon, Agumon and Gabumon are able to unlock his Paladin form, meaning we're in for the most epic final battle we have ever seen. Oh. So you just stabbed him once in the head, and then everyone sent him to the recycling bin with their Nokias. Okay, much as I love Paladin mode, I have to admit that was weak. But, still better than the third OVA. So with that, I am done talking about the Digimon Emperor and Zero Two by proxy. Aside from my one big gripe, he is still one of my favourite anime villains. Now, if you'd like me to mix things up in the future with a few more character histories and analyses, do let me know, but otherwise, I'll see you all soon. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. You've all helped me to afford Christmas this year. Especially Anonymous, Cassie Belmont, Dan Brown, Fitzwilliam Ramsbottom, Neve Calderwood, Pixel Busher, Ravi Poodle, Shameboy, Thomas Walker, and Tomb Pirates. Take easy, everyone.